The silence before the spotlight, the lights had not yet risen, and the stage remained quiet. The audience waited, whispering in hushed tones. No one knew that behind the curtain, a young woman stood still, her hands trembling, her heart pounding, like a trapped bird. Her name was Charlotte Rampling, and at this moment she was not the acclaimed actress the world would later know. She was simply a girl who carried fear, hope, and the weight of silence. Charlotte had been told many times that she had the face of a model and the eyes of someone who could hold a story. But when she looked at herself in the mirror, she only saw fragility. Her childhood had not been one of endless applause. Her father was a British officer, strict and distant, and her mother was graceful, but often locked away in her own sadness. Charlotte grew up between discipline and silence, learning to keep her emotions hidden behind a calm face. She understood early that the world respected strength, but she carried storms inside her heart. As the curtain lifted, she remembered the day everything had changed. She was not on stage then. She was on a quiet street in London, the kind of day when the air felt heavy, even without rain. She had just finished a modeling assignment, wearing clothes that did not feel like her own, when a man approached her. He spoke of film, of characters, of faces that could whisper entire stories. Without words, "You have that face," he told her. Charlotte laughed nervously, thinking it was a mistake. She was not meant for the screen. She was too reserved, too unsure. Yet his words stayed with her, like a seed planted in uncertain soil. The first time she walked onto a film set, she felt invisible. Everyone moved quickly, voices sharp and commands constant. Cameras rolled, lights burned hot, and people barely looked at her. She wondered if she belonged. She wondered if anyone would notice her presence. But then came the first scene. It was a small role, a glance, a moment where she had to show grief without speaking. When the director called action, something inside her shifted. She let her own sadness rise, memories of loneliness, the sting of being overlooked, the ache of wanting love. The camera caught it, and suddenly the room went quiet. People looked at her differently, and for the first time, she felt that silence could also be power, but success did not arrive with ease. Charlotte's career was built on whispers, not shouts. While others chased glamour, she chose roles that were heavy, broken, and raw. The world did not always understand her choices. Critics questioned her. Some called her difficult, others too distant. But Charlotte knew something about herself. She was not here to please. She was here to reveal truth, even if it made people uncomfortable. Still, her personal life carried storms she could not escape. Her sister, the one person who had been her companion through childhood silence, died tragically when Charlotte was still young. The news broke her. She felt as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet. For weeks, she could not speak of it. She carried the grief inside, a secret wound that shaped her forever. This loss became part of her acting, part of the depth in her eyes. Every time she stood before a camera, the pain lived there, silent, yet alive. It gave her a strange kind of strength, but it also left scars. Audiences began to notice something about Charlotte. Her performances were not just acting, they were confessions. She played women who were haunted, fragile, yet unyielding. She became a mirror for those who had known heartbreak, those who had faced loneliness, those who carried silence within themselves. She was no longer invisible. Her name began to move through the film world, not as a star who shone loudly, but as one who lingered in memory. And yet, even as she rose higher, Charlotte remained humble. Fame never softened her edges or turned her into something she was not. She kept her quiet ways, her reflective eyes. She treated people with kindness, even when the industry could be cruel. She never forgot the weight of grief or the power of silence. She lived with humility, reminding herself that every performance was not just about her, it was about the people watching, the ones who needed to feel seen. But the story of Charlotte Rampling is not just about success. It is about transformation. It is about how a young girl, trembling behind a curtain, became a woman who could hold the gaze of millions. It is about how silence became her strength and grief became her gift. It is about resilience, respect, and the courage to remain true when the world tried to shape her differently. The spotlight eventually came for her, but it never blinded her. Instead, she used it to reveal what others tried to hide: the truth of human fragility, the beauty of imperfection, and the quiet dignity of survival. And as she stood backstage once again, years later, waiting to walk into a hall filled with applause, she thought not of her fame but of her sister, her parents, her younger self. She thought of the silence that had once frightened her and now carried her. She smiled gently, ready to step forward, because her story had only just begun. Shadows of loss. The applause faded into the distance, but Charlotte could not carry the sound home with her. When she closed the door to her apartment, silence returned. It was not the gentle kind of silence that comforts. It was the heavy kind, the kind that reminds you of what is missing, the kind that whispers of grief. Charlotte had tasted success on screen, but her private life was another story. Years before, the sudden loss of her sister had left a scar she never fully spoke about. They had been close, not only as siblings but as companions in a household where emotions were often locked away. Her sister had been her mirror, her friend, the one who understood the quiet ache in her heart. Losing her felt like losing part of her own soul. For many nights, Charlotte sat awake, staring at the ceiling, asking questions no one could answer. Why had life been so cruel? Why had the one person who gave her comfort been taken so soon? Grief shaped her days in ways no one could see. When she stood in front of the camera, the sadness slipped through her eyes, giving life to her characters. People praised her depth, her ability to express pain so truthfully. But they did not know the cost. They did not know she was pouring her own brokenness into the screen. Work became her refuge. She accepted roles that others might avoid, roles that were difficult, dark, even disturbing. She was drawn to characters who carried wounds, who lived in silence, who struggled to find meaning in a chaotic world. These roles were not just art, they were therapy. Through them, she processed her own pain. Through them, she honored the memory of her sister. But success never removed the weight of judgment. In an industry that celebrated glamour and easy smiles, Charlotte's choices confused many. Critics called her cold, distant, even strange. Producers wanted her to be softer, lighter, more commercial. But Charlotte resisted. She refused to betray her truth. Once, after a film premiere, a journalist approached her with a question that stung. "Why do you always look so serious?" he asked. "Don't you think audiences want joy?" Charlotte paused, her calm gaze, holding his. She spoke quietly, almost like a whisper. "Because life is not always joy. Sometimes it is silence, sometimes it is pain. And I want people to know it is okay to feel that too." The journalist did not know how to respond, but those who overheard remembered her words. Behind this strength, however, there was still fragility. Charlotte struggled with loneliness. Relationships came and went, some ending in heartbreak, some in distance. She longed for love, yet she feared it too. She feared losing again, the way she had lost her sister. Love, to her, felt both like a gift and a risk, her mother's declining. Health only deepened the shadows. Charlotte would visit often, sitting by her side, watching as age and sadness took hold. She remembered her mother's beauty, her grace, and the sorrow that had always lingered in her eyes. It was as if pain ran through their family like a hidden river, shaping each generation. Yet even in the darkest seasons, Charlotte carried kindness. She treated colleagues with respect, from the famous directors to the assistants on set. She never let pride distance her from others. People often said that she had a quiet humility, the kind that did not demand attention but earned admiration. She remembered how it felt to be overlooked, to feel invisible, and she never wanted others to feel that way. One day, during the shooting of a film in France, she noticed a young actress struggling with her lines. The crew was impatient, the director losing patience, voices sharp and unforgiving. Charlotte walked over, placed a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder, and whispered, "Breathe. Do not perform for them. Perform for yourself." The girl nodded, steadied herself, and delivered the scene beautifully. Later, she would say that moment changed her. It gave her courage. Such acts of kindness were small, but they were the foundation of who Charlotte was. She had learned that true strength did not come from applause or awards. It came from empathy. It came from helping others carry their burdens even when her own were heavy. Still, the road was not easy. Fame could not protect her from inner battles. She wrestled with questions of identity, of meaning, of belonging. Sometimes, in the middle of a crowded party, she felt utterly alone. Sometimes, after a performance praised by critics, she would sit quietly in her hotel room, asking herself if it was enough. But life had a way of surprising her. During one film festival, when she felt particularly tired of the constant eyes upon her, she received a letter. It was from a woman she had never met. The letter spoke of loss, of loneliness, of nights filled with tears. And then it spoke of Charlotte. "I saw you in a film," the woman wrote, "and for the first time I felt that someone understood me. I felt less alone." Charlotte held that letter in her hands for a long time. Tears filled her eyes. In that moment, she realized something important. Her work was not just about her grief. It was not just about art. It was about connection. By revealing her own wounds, she had given others permission to face theirs. By embracing silence and fragility, she had spoken for those who could not find the words. This became her mission, though she never announced it. She would continue to choose roles that were true, even if they were difficult. She would continue to show the world that there is beauty in imperfection, dignity in struggle, and power in honesty. And so, though the shadows of loss never left her, Charlotte transformed them into light, a quiet, steady light that reached into the lives of strangers. A light that reminded the world, we are all fragile, but we are never truly alone. And as she stepped out into the cold night air after another long day on set, she looked up at the sky. The stars above seemed endless, silent, watching. She thought of her sister, her mother, her younger self. She whispered softly, "I am still here, and I will keep going." The night did not answer, but in her heart, she felt a calm strength rise. Her journey was not over, it was only deepening. The weight of recognition, the letter from a stranger, had awakened something inside Charlotte. She began to see her work differently. It was no longer just a personal expression of pain. It was a bridge, a way to connect with people she would never meet. And with every role, that bridge grew wider. By the late 1970s, her name began to cross borders. Filmmakers in Europe called for her, directors in America admired her, and audiences worldwide started to recognize the woman with the quiet eyes who carried whole worlds in a single look. She was not the loud kind of star, not the one who filled gossip pages or chased attention. Yet, her presence lingered in the minds of anyone who watched her. But with recognition came pressure. Invitations to film festivals, interviews, red carpets. It all became a part of her life. She walked among glittering lights, dressed in elegance, surrounded by voices praising her. And yet, in the middle of that glamour, Charlotte often felt the same silence she had known as a child. Applause did not erase loneliness. Fame did not heal wounds. One night in Venice, at a grand festival where cameras flashed endlessly, Charlotte sat quietly at the edge of a hall. Music filled the air, laughter surrounded her, but she felt distant, as if she were watching it all from behind glass. Then, an older actor she respected approached her. He looked into her eyes, as if reading the tiredness hidden there, and said softly, "Fame is heavy, isn't it?" She nodded. He added, "But if you carry it with humility, it will not crush you." Those words stayed with her. Charlotte chose humility every time. She never let herself forget that she was a human being before she was an actress. She greeted everyone on set, from the camera operator to the makeup artist, with kindness. She never demanded special treatment. She reminded herself that success was fragile. That applause could fade overnight. Yet even with this balance, she faced storms. One film role in particular pushed her into controversy. It was daring, provocative, and unlike anything audiences had expected. Critics were divided. Some hailed her as fearless, others condemned her as reckless. The backlash was strong, and for a time, she felt the sting of rejection. People whispered, some friends distanced themselves, offers slowed. Alone in her flat, she asked herself if she had made a mistake. She replayed the scenes in her mind, the risks she had taken, the judgment that followed. But then she remembered the woman's letter, the promise she had made to herself, to always be truthful, no matter the cost. She whispered, "This is who I am. I cannot betray that." And so she stood firm. In time, the controversy faded, and respect returned. In fact, her courage to choose difficult roles became part of her identity as an actress. Directors began to seek her out not for safe performances, but for the kind that unsettled, that revealed the uncomfortable truths of human life. She became known as someone who did not fear shadows, someone who walked into them with steady steps. But even as her career reached international heights, her personal life continued to test her resilience. Relationships remained complicated. Love entered her life, but often with fractures. She longed for stability, for a family she could hold on to, but life seemed to place obstacles in her path. There were moments of happiness, yes, but also heartbreak that echoed her past losses. Once during an interview, a journalist asked her, "Do you regret anything?" Charlotte paused. She could have spoken of her struggles, of the sacrifices, of the loneliness, but she answered with quiet strength. "Regret is heavy," she said. "I try to carry memories, not regret." Her words spread widely, quoted in newspapers, shared among fans. They revealed her wisdom, her ability to find meaning even in pain. Amidst this journey, Charlotte found herself mentoring younger actors. Many of them, nervous and overwhelmed, sought her advice. She told them the same thing she had once told the young actress in France. "Do not act for others. Act for yourself. The truth will follow." Her guidance became a source of inspiration, and many credited her with giving them the courage to pursue their paths. Still, Charlotte's deepest battles were with herself. She often questioned what it meant to live fully, to give meaning to her art, to find peace within. There were nights she would sit by the window, watching the city lights flicker and wonder if the applause and awards truly mattered. What did matter, she realized, were the small moments of connection, the letter from a stranger, the comfort given to a colleague, the glance of someone in the audience who felt understood. And so she continued, balancing light and shadow, applause and silence. She was admired by many, misunderstood by some, but she never abandoned her truth. Her recognition grew, but she did not let it harden her. She carried it as lightly as she could, remembering always that fame is a visitor, not a companion. Humility, kindness, resilience, these were the companions she chose. And one evening, as she walked off a stage after receiving yet another honor, she thought of her younger self. the girl trembling behind a curtain, afraid of silence. She smiled gently and whispered, "We made it here. Not because we changed, but because we stayed true." The applause roared outside, but inside her heart, there was only a quiet peace. The mirror of time. The years moved quickly, as they always do in a world built on beauty and youth. In film, the camera is both a gift and a curse. It captures truth, but it also magnifies change. Charlotte knew this well. When she looked into the mirror, she no longer saw the young woman with sharp cheekbones and endless eyes. She saw time, carving its lines, shadows deepening, a face weathered by life. For many actresses, this was the moment of fear. Roles began to shrink, offers became fewer, and whispers of "too old" echoed in the halls of casting offices. Hollywood, with its obsession for youth, was unforgiving. But Charlotte was not Hollywood. She belonged to truth, not trends, and she refused to hide from time. When asked once in an interview if she feared aging, Charlotte gave a small smile. "Why should I fear what is natural?" she said. "The camera should capture life as it is. I will not erase it." Those words stirred both admiration and debate, but Charlotte stood firm. She would let the camera see her fully, wrinkles, weariness, and wisdom. This decision, however, was not without struggle. She still felt the sting of being overlooked. Younger actresses filled screens, faces unlined and fresh, drawing attention and praise. Charlotte sometimes wondered if her time had passed. Yet each time doubt whispered, she remembered her promise to herself, to be true no matter the cost. Then came a turning point. A director approached her with a script. The role was of a woman who had lived through loss, betrayal, and time itself. It was not glamorous, not polished. It was raw, difficult, and honest. When Charlotte read it, she felt her heart stir. This was not just another role, this was her reflection. On set, she gave herself completely. Every scene was drawn not from performance but from life. Her grief for her sister, the silence of her mother, the loneliness she had carried, the resilience she had built. When the film released, audiences were stunned. Critics called it one of the most powerful performances of her career. People said she was not acting, she was living. That film marked a new chapter. Instead of fading into obscurity, Charlotte rose again, this time as a symbol of truth in aging. She showed the world that beauty is not in youth alone, but in honesty, in courage, in the lines carved by life. She inspired not only audiences but also other actors who feared growing older. But beyond the screen, she still lived simply. She walked alone through quiet streets, visited bookshops, sat in cafes with a cup of coffee and a notebook. She found comfort in ordinary things. Her kindness remained constant. On sets, she treated young actors with encouragement, telling them not to fear the industry's demands. "The world will ask you to change," she told them, "but if you stay true, your art will survive longer than your beauty." Yet even in this new chapter of recognition, Charlotte faced personal trials. Her health at times grew fragile, her energy not what it once was. She worried about the future, about being forgotten once more. She wrestled with loneliness, the kind that visits late at night when the world is asleep. But instead of hiding from it, she faced it. She spoke openly in interviews about struggle, about depression, about the shadows that linger in even the brightest lives. This honesty made people admire her more, for she showed that even stars carried the same burdens as anyone else. Her humility drew others close. Fans wrote to her again, letters filled with gratitude. One woman, older now, reminded her of the first letter years ago. "I watched your film again," she wrote, "and now, as I grow older myself, you make me feel strong. You show me that I do not have to hide." Charlotte held that letter in her hands with quiet tears. She had not just acted, She had given courage to someone else. This became her quiet mission in later years, to remind the world that aging is not an ending, but a transformation, that love, respect, and resilience do not fade with time. They grow deeper. One evening after a film screening, a young reporter nervously asked her, "How do you do it? How do you stay so strong when the world changes around you?" Charlotte smiled gently. "Strength," she said, "is not never breaking. It is breaking and still choosing to stand." The room fell silent at her words. In that moment, she was no longer just an actress. She was a voice, a guide, a reflection of every person who had faced time and kept walking. And as she left the hall, stepping into the night, the cool air brushed against her face. The city lights shimmered, and she whispered to herself, "The mirror of time shows me truth, and I am not afraid." The night carried her words into silence, but her heart carried peace. The legacy of silence. The hall was filled with faces, young, old, strangers, friends. They had all gathered for an evening dedicated to Charlotte Rampling, honoring a lifetime of work. Her films were being shown, her interviews replayed, her words quoted. Yet, as she sat quietly in the front row, she did not think of awards or applause. She thought of the path that had led her here, the trembling girl behind a curtain, the grief of losing her sister, the storms of criticism, the long silence of nights alone, the courage to keep going. When she walked on stage to speak, the crowd rose in applause. But Charlotte raised her hand gently, asking for quiet. When the room grew still, she began. Her voice was calm, steady, like someone speaking not to impress but to share truth. "I have been called many things," she said. "Beautiful, strange, distant, fearless. But what I am is human, and like all of you, I have known pain, loneliness, and loss. The only difference is the camera caught mine. But it was never about me. It was about showing that all of us, no matter who we are, carry shadows and light." The room listened, unmoving. Her words carried weight, not because they were grand, but because they were honest. "I once thought silence was weakness," she continued, "but I learned it is also strength. In silence, you hear truth. In silence, you find resilience. And sometimes, silence speaks louder than applause." Tears filled the eyes of many in the audience. Her humility, her wisdom, her raw humanity, it reached them. As she left the stage that night, Charlotte felt something rare, peace. She no longer feared being forgotten, because she realized she never truly would be. Not because of fame, but because of the lives she had touched. The letters from strangers, the young actors she had encouraged, the women who felt stronger because of her honesty. These were her true awards. In her later days, Charlotte spent more time away from the spotlight. She walked through gardens, read poetry, and visited quiet places by the sea. She still acted sometimes, but only when the role spoke to her truth. She chose quality over quantity, depth over shine. She no longer needed to prove anything to the world. She had already proven it to herself. One evening, as the sun was setting over the horizon, she sat by a window with a cup of tea. The golden light painted the room in soft colors. She thought of her sister, of her mother, of all the people she had loved and lost. She whispered softly, "I carried you with me. Always. You gave me strength when I thought I had none." Quiet smile touched her lips. Her life had not been easy, but it had been full of truth, full of resilience, full of kindness. The world would remember Charlotte Rampling not only as an actress, but as a mirror of humanity. Someone who showed that fragility is not weakness, that aging is not the end, that silence can be powerful, And that kindness is the truest strength. And so her story closes not with a roar of applause, but with a whisper of reflection. Because in the end, what matters is not how loud we are, but how deeply we touch the hearts of others.